गुड न्यूज टुडे, नई उम्मीद जगाने वाला हिंदी न्यूज चैनल।
Now the big developing story of the day, and that from Afghanistan. The battle for Panjshir is now in final stages. Taliban is claiming that they have taken control of Panjshir, which was, remember, the last free area in Afghanistan that was being held by the resistance forces, and that has never really been taken over by any other outside force. Taliban has claimed that they have completely conquered the Panjshir and came under the control of the Islamic State of Afghanistan. On your screens, take a look. These are Taliban fighters taking control of the governor house in Panjshir. They hoisted the flag at the governor's office and thereby then making the claim that they have emerged victorious. However, Resistance Forces Commander Amrullah Saleh's aide told India today that Taliban's claim is false. He has said that the resistance forces are up on the mountains, they are defending themselves and the terrain. Earlier, the resistance forces had called for ceasefire, but Taliban have rejected their offer. Meanwhile, as per Tolo News, which is Afghanistan's one of the most popular channel, Fahim Dashti, he was a journalist, resistance forces spokesperson, has been now killed in clashes with the Taliban. Local media has suggested nephew of Ahmad Masood, General Abul Udud Zare, was also killed. According to sources, leaders of resistance forces, Ahmad Masood is in Tajikistan for the past 3 days. Amrullah Saleh is still holding in the valley, but at an undisclosed location, and for now is safe. And now India Today, in this elaborate coverage, is going to tell you all possible angles of this story. All my colleagues there you can see on our screens. Geeta Mohan, Foreign Affairs Editor, also Senior Executive Editor Gaurav Sawant, who's been tracking for the past few days every development that's been coming in. Defense Editor Abhishek Bhalla, and also Sai Kiran Kannan for all the investigative angles that have also come in. First to you, Gaurav. The fact that Panjshir we'd been speaking about was the last free citadel, to get information coming in that it is in its final stages. What does it mean? What are you picking up? Gaurav.
Pooja, the fact remains that at Governor's House, the Taliban now have their flag. They've captured a lot of weaponry of the resistance. Also remains the fact that Panjshir had never been captured before this. The Soviets couldn't do it. Taliban between 96 and 2001 couldn't do it. But it's from what resistance fighters are putting out, it's Pakistan's air power. Pakistan Air Force using unmanned aerial vehicles and using their aircraft and helicopters that's said to have made all the difference. And Shamshi Air Base was activated. A lot of fighter activity was seen. Other activity was seen, which made this difference between the past and present. Yes, it does appear that Panjshir has fallen. You mentioned two of the commandos who were killed. There are some other commanders who are either missing or may have fallen in battle, apart from Fahim Dasti and General Wadud. But Amrullah Saleh is still out there somewhere. According to resistance fighters still in Panjshir, some argue that Ahmad Masood has gone to Tajikistan, but again we are awaiting clarity on that aspect. But the fact remains that Pakistan's DG ISI, General Faiz Hamid, he's been camping in Kabul for several days. There are reports that say that several Pakistan Army officers and fighters have been on ground in Kabul and with the fighters in Panjshir. So that perhaps made this battle completely unequal between the resistance fighters and the Pakistan Army leading the Taliban.
That's big news coming in from Panjshir. Remember, all eyes will be on this specific terrain. But I request all our colleagues to stay on with me, because you must understand why Panjshir is so important. It is known as the area of 5 lions, the Panjshir. But it's been a nightmare for the invaders. And I want to take you through point by point. It's been considered as having been, with its natural defenses, never being conquered. It is known as one of those free citadels that's always been, was never conquered even by the Taliban. Region is tucked into the Hindu Kush mountains. So whether it is its geographical location, logistically, it's always been at an advantage. The geographically valley has been cut off from rest of the Afghanistan. So while of course it is part of the country, it always had its own culture, its own ethnicities, and importantly had its own defense forces that had been there for centuries. In fact, narrow passage created by the Panjshir River is the only access point point. One of the reasons that it's not been easily whether conquered, invaded or accessed by any government. These narrow stretch for access can be defended easily, but that, remember, defense is also now, as Gaurav also telling us, unequal in so many ways, given now what Taliban forces have at their disposal. Valley is known for its emeralds, and of course these are natural resources that we are telling you, and that is why perhaps attracting attention as well. Emeralds are used to finance the resistance movement. They do have the support. The world is watching the Panjshir area, and importantly, these are some of the points that you must know why Panjshir is of extremely important value for now. I want to go across to our senior colleagues. Remember, all of them have been tracking different aspects of it. I want to first go across to Abhishek Bhala, because Abhishek, we've been talking about the geographical aspect of it. The fact that Taliban today has arsenal with it, ammunition with it, all of that equipment that was left abandoned by the US forces. Do you think that will come into the fore here while the Panjshir resistance forces are trying to defend their territory?
Pooja, it was never going to be easy for the resistance forces this time around, even though Panjshir has been a bastion against any kind of aggression, and it had held its fort. But this time around, the Taliban got the better of 3 lakh plus Afghan forces. So obviously it was a question of time. Till now, perhaps there was a lot of negotiation happening. There were a lot of talks happening behind the scenes, even though, what we saw is that Panjshir had become the center of resistance, but that doesn't mean that there was no negotiation happening. Now it seems that there has certainly been a setback, a bit of a jolt for the resistance forces. There have been some casualties at the high level as well. How long can they continue with this resistance is the question, because the Taliban obviously is in a position to take over the area. But again, the question remains whether they would want to talk to the resistance forces or use complete brutal force to take over. Since there have been casualties, it seems there has been intense fighting going on. Amrullah Saleh, there were reports initially that he had fled, but now there are reports coming in that he's still in the region. And in fact, one of the places where he was staying was attacked. It was bombarded, and that's where he escaped and went into a hideout. But as I said, the big question remains, how long will this resistance continue? Because the Taliban is in a position to take over this last bastion.
Long and till possibly how many hours or days could the resistance forces hold on? I want to now quickly go across to our foreign affairs editor Geeta Mohan as well. Geeta, what are the international ramifications of it? How are you picking this up? Because of course the bigger question will remain, how should India respond? How should India react? How does this have repercussions in India and for the government to be watching it? Tell us through all the details of that.
Well, there is no official recognition of Taliban government in Afghanistan, but Pooja, there is absolute legitimacy that the United States has accorded to the Taliban by allowing them to form a government, by allowing them the conversation, and by allowing them to take over Afghanistan, not just Kabul, now also the resistance forces, and also taking on all those who are resisting the Taliban, even in the streets of Kabul and Herat. We saw visuals of women who were protesting for their rights, and in return, rather than listening to them, they were beaten up. So it is all being done under the approval of the United States of America. Secretary of State Antony Blinken yesterday said that the Taliban will not be able to stand another round of economic sanctions if they were to violate. But explain violate to me if all the clauses of the Doha agreement have already been violated, if the Taliban are already in violation. They're still speaking of something that can be done in the future, but in terms of really taking some action and stopping the bloodshed and violence, we haven't seen anything from the international community yet, apart from a few resolutions and a few statements of intent. We do know that the United Nations representative met with Mullah Baradar and said that they are going to continue helping and assisting Afghanistan. But their assistance, and in what form is the assistance going to come, is something we'll have to wait and see. Humanitarian crisis at large, not just in border areas, all those who fled their homes and went to Panjshir seeking some sort of cover from the resistance forces now are falling prey to the Taliban. So the situation is dire and the bloodshed will have to stop. It is for the international community to reach out to the Taliban and not just Ahmed Massoud.
Geeta, you're making a very important point that, yes, you're telling about these significant names and all of this, remember, while the humanitarian crisis is on, and how does the United Nations or other international organizations respond is important to understand. I want to now take you through some of the key personalities, like Geeta was also talking about. Take a look at this. Home province, so one of the greatest guerrilla leaders of the 20th century, Ahmad Shah Massoud, literally a legendary figure. Former Vice President of Afghanistan, Amrullah Saleh as well. They are known to have lived there. Panjshir is known as basically the Valley of Five Lions. It's located 150 kilometers north of Kabul and close to the Hindu Kush Mountains. With a population of about 173,000, most of the inhabitants belong to the Tajik ethnic group. The valley never fell to the Taliban during the 1990s, nor was it conquered by Soviets earlier in the 1980s, and because of its location, which is extremely strategic in nature, makes it a natural fortress as well. Now, the only access point to Panjshir is through a narrow passage, and that passage is created by a river known as the Panjshir River. All roads to the valley are closed to outsiders. According to some reports, there are about 8,000 to 10,000 anti-Taliban fighters for now in Panjshir. So what are the challenges then? How do these fighters that are there in Panjshir, how do they really battle it out? The biggest concern, Taliban will put up guards around Panjshir and stop the supply of food and essentials. When they cut that off, as per official report, Panjshir Valley has enough food and medical supplies for now, even to last till the next winter season. But the Tajik fighters need bigger weapons to fight the Taliban terrorists, which the Ghani administration has never provided them. And much of this, all of this that you see as a strategic location to understand, does not have running water or electricity. Most residents rely on generators for a few hours every day. But under the soil of Panjshir, there is a huge stock of emeralds that has never been touched yet. In the medieval period, just taking you through for a historical perspective, Panjshir was famous for silver mining. Till 1985, crystals up to 190 carats have been found there. So if mining infrastructure is prepared, then the area will develop very fast. This is just to help you understand precisely what is the historical, geographical perspective of it. Let's get you now a ground update. I'm going across now to Sai Kiran. Sai Kiran, because you've often brought forth reports of a digital, analytical nature with so many other ground reports that have also come in. How do you look at the current status here? Do you think it is precisely the geographical location that we have been talking about, that it has still not been occupied, but again, it's only a matter of time?
Yes, I mean, like Abhishek Balla correctly pointed out. Of course, we do not have any visual confirmations yet of any possible, Pakistan support for the Taliban in, conquering Panjshir. But there have been numerous on-ground reports saying that there has been a lot of tactical and logistical support from the Pakistan ISI. It also makes a lot of sense when the DG of the ISI is in Kabul. His entire team is there. There's a lot of discussions going on in terms of conquering Panjshir, because like people have said, it's never been done before. And secondly, it's also important to note something that we've also reported in India Today before. It's the PR angle of Taliban, because they get messages across social media in a very rapid pace, and even if they are prior to conquering Panjshir, they put out messages saying
what you're telling us is very important. It's about the timing for now as well. I request all of you to please stay on with me, because I'm joined by an Afghan journalist right now, Hikmatullah Ahmadzadi, and to tell us precisely what is the status. Hikmatullah, what are you picking up on the present situation with Panjshir? Because clearly the Taliban forces have at their disposal huge ammunition and arsenal. What are you picking up from the ground? Over to you, Hikmatullah.
Yeah, 1 hour ago that the spokesman of Islamic Emirate confirmed that we captured the last province of Afghanistan, Panjshir, and also the footage that we received from the province that Taliban entered the governor house of Panjshir. So there is no any official confirmation from the National Resistance Front yet, but last night their spokesman in the fighting.
Picking up precisely right now in terms of the casualties that have happened with regard to the resistance fighters? Is that a high number? Because we do have confirmation of, for now, only perhaps 2 or 3 crucial figures. Is there any other confirmation that you can bring forth to us?
There is not any specific limits of casualty yet.
And what are you picking up with regard? Yes.
Fighting in several parts of the country. There is not, I mentioned, there is not any specific number yet, but there was a heavy fighting was continued last night in some part of the Panjshir, but they confirm both of sides that we have casualty. The spokesman also was killed last night in the fighting.
And if you may tell us about the Taliban claims, there's been a claim that has come that they have conquered the Panjshir, even though the resistance forces have rejected that claim.
Yeah, there is no any special or official news from the resistance yet. We didn't receive any specific information that but Taliban confirmed. And today, 11 a.m., Zabiullah Mujahid will be have media conference in media center here in Kabul.
Also, Hikmatullah, if for our viewers to understand the Panjshir area, that we are being told that the food supplies have possibly been cut, that the internet supplies have been cut in that area as well. So it is very difficult, one of the reasons, to now really figure out what is going to happen next.
Yeah, there was rumors and we received some news that internet has been cut and some food and others way towards Panjshir were cut and captured by the Taliban. And the Bat Mujahid said this morning that the life of the civilian will be continued as before.
If I may ask you, what is the present status on the ground? Because there have been protests by the women, but also the Taliban is saying that we do assure once we plan and announce the government that the situation will change. How is the status in Kabul, in Kandahar, in other areas in Afghanistan? How is the situation developing? I understand it may not be easy for you to give all the details, but as much as you can.
Yeah, we face with uncertain situation. All Afghans face with such a situation. They don't know about their future, and especially the women's protest in Kabul. And after the Taliban said that everything will be fine when we announce the government, and that's the status of Afghanistan right now. Everything is unclear.
Do you think it's also a difficult time there, specifically with regard to the media freedom? Because we've seen some of the journalists who have had to even leave, especially women, that Taliban, of course, wants a certain way for it to be projected on the screen. So do you think media freedom is going to be difficult? Because even Fahim Dashti himself had fought for media freedom in Afghanistan for the past 20 years.
Still, in Kabul, there is no any. We didn't face any problem regarding freedom, especially in the regarding of journalism. But we received some news that they don't allow the cameraman or the journalists to enter somewhere.
And one of my final questions: the world is watching what is unfolding in Afghanistan. How do you want other governments of other countries, or even the international organizations, human rights organizations, to really take up this matter? If you can hear me, Patullah.
I didn't catch your question. Can you repeat it?
How do you
Sorry for
want
that.
other countries and the world to respond to what is unfolding there in Afghanistan? Because it is a humanitarian crisis and there are people in problem. How do you want the world to respond for now?
Yeah, world is also concerned about Afghanistan. This humanitarian crisis is going in Afghanistan, but some of them rejected that. They said that we will not recognize them as a national regime, but we will wait for a few days when Taliban announce the new government.
All right, I wish you all the very best. Hikmatullah Mazadi, thank you so much for talking to us to give possible details. Remember, it's not even easy getting information, especially from the Panjshir area, which has been cut off completely, even with its food supplies. We'll try and get you as many reactions as we can here. Remember,